SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste, hello everyone. Welcome again to my NPTEL course on interior design. We are at lecture number 38 today. We are going to continue with our discussions on creative and cultural industries, that is CCIs. And today we will focus specifically on visual art and interior design. And when I say interior design, it is inclusive of interior architecture. And when it is visual art, then it also includes design and craft. And we will see this categorization. So the contents for today, broadly we are going to discuss CCIs, that is the cultural creative industries, and then we'll see some examples and cases which specifically showcase visual art, craft, interior architecture, and of course some references. So when I say cultural and creative industries, it's a definition given by UNESCO, and UNESCO defines them as sectors of organized activity whose principal purpose is the production or reproduction, promotion, distribution, and or commercialization of goods, services and activities, all of which have a cultural nature or a heritage related nature or an artistic nature. So that's the important part. And it makes relevant the entire productive chain. So when we talk about goods, services, and we talk about the production, there is a certain value chain involved in it. There are stakeholders at different stages, from procuring the raw material all the way to packaging and transportation. So when we talk about this approach and we talk about cultural creative industries, this term makes it relevant to understand and acknowledge the entire productive chain, as well as the specific functions of each sector involved in bringing these creations to the public. These are some of the subsectors of CCIs, and here you see what I have highlighted. So architecture being one, and this is the visual arts category, and it has creators of visual arts, photography, design, art and craft, museums, all of these. There are also books, newspapers and magazines, music, it's a big subsector under CCI umbrella. Also performing arts, and then yes, TV, films, radio, even video games, and also advertising. So these are the subsectors that have been identified under the umbrella of cultural creative industries, and they have artistic nature or a cultural nature or a heritage related nature. And we often look at them only for entertainment or for cultural relations or connotations, and these are often not looked in terms of generating much of economy, especially visual arts. So how can we actually contribute to the GDPs of nations when we concentrate on this bracket of CCIs is an interesting discussion, and some part of it we will also cover today. So the term creative industries is relatively very recent, and while there are obvious connections to and continuities with cultural industries such as performing arts and handicrafts, the designation marks a historical shift in approach to potential commercial activities that until recently were regarded purely or predominantly in non-economic terms. So that's what I was saying. Some of the activities that we saw only culturally related or only in a very romantic way and in a very nostalgic way, which tell stories from the past and which carry forward our legacy and traditions, they very well can be looked also in terms of generation of economy and GDP. So that is a historical shift, and CCIs capture this historical shift, and this is what UNESCO endorses. UNESCO remains the only international organization with a global vision of the socio-cultural and economic role of crafts in society. So they specifically talk about crafts, and I am particularly emphasizing this because throughout this course on interior design, we have had discussions on interior architecture and building crafts or space making crafts. So I have just tried to highlight it here. It states that crafts are artistic expressions rooted in community traditions. So we also talked about communities, traditions, techniques, skills, knowledge of the material, artistic expressions. They pass on knowledge from one generation to the next, often orally, and they are a part of intangible heritage predominantly. Contemporary crafts also exist alongside creative industries. It's not only traditional, because contemporary crafts could also be a continuity to traditional crafts. They could also be something very, innovative, digital, and going by what is required according to today's needs, and how have these craftspersons evolved in terms of expressions and, adopting new methods. As people are open to acquiring objects of symbolic value, crafts have managed to adapt in new ways, like I was just talking about that evolution, creating innovative products that reflect the creativity and cultural heritage of their creators. So, we do talk about contemporary crafts within the umbrella of CCI. Now, these are some very interesting statistics, and they will give us some, very interesting insights and perspectives on the economic value of visual arts. And when I talk about visual arts and I talk about economic value, I'm also talking about their role and contribution in the domain of interior design or interior architecture, because we have been seeing some case studies and projects, how these cultural creative industries, art, craft, they could be very well a part of vocabulary of design, and we could work in an ecosystem, working with the makers and then having this holistic team that envisions space and execution of designs. So this is the case of US, and there is a lot of contribution to US economy from these creative industries. And there is also the creation of jobs, precisely 4.7 million jobs as per this statistic. And the GDP contribution to GDP is 4% through these arts. And the top arts and cultural industries here in the US are broadcasting, publishing. We see arts, culture, retail. We did talk about retail design, retail spaces, when we tried to understand the types of spaces within the interior design domain, its field, the kinds of projects that we do. Performing arts, advertising, motion pictures, and video. So these are some of the important statistics which help us also understand in terms of numbers, in terms of economy, what is the big role and contribution of art, craft, in the overall economy and well-being of the population. So the jobs created and so much of data which is over here. So you can go through the graphic in the detail for more information. The Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker, stated that with the creation of new data analysis like this one that we just saw, which shows how arts and culture contribute to GDP, the Department of Commerce is providing a more detailed picture of what drives the US economy, growth, and job creation. What is driving a significant portion of our economy today is the production of creative and cultural content. That's very important. Members of the creative community, myself included, have long made the case that these industries are a vital part of our nation's economic well-being, and this announcement further proves that fact. So the Secretary continues to emphasize on the vital part in a nation's economic well-being achieved through this creative content, creative community, and creative industries. The UNESCO Creative Cities Network, UCCN, is another important thing that I would like to bring to your notice. It was created in 2004 to promote cooperation with and among cities that have identified creativity as a strategic factor for sustainable urban development. So it's a network which identifies creative cities across the globe, And the 350 cities which currently make up this network, they work towards a common objective, placing creativity and cultural industries at the heart of their development plans at the local level and cooperating actively at the international level. So it's a huge network from different parts of the world, and these cities have been identified and designated as creative cities based on certain important paradigms and aspects, which make them, stand out as creative cities. These are some creative cities from India. So, Jaipur was added in 2015 for its crafts and folk arts. Then we know Varanasi for its music, so it was also added in 2015. We have the creative city of Chennai, again for music. Mumbai in 2019 for film. Hyderabad was again added in 2019 for gastronomy, which is your food and cuisine. Srinagar again for crafts and folk arts, much like Jaipur, and this was added in 2021. And then in 2023, we have Gwalior for music and Kozhikode for literature. So the network encourages cultural exchange in a specific category. We just saw some of the categories. It could be crafts, folk arts, design, gastronomy, films, literature, media arts, music, design. And actually, this category is also expanding, and there is recognition to some new fields as well. And provides international opportunities for the city's economic growth in the specific sector of creative industries, which have cultural backdrops, which have artistic nature, and which are capable of being called industries since they can contribute to the economic well being of a nation. Now, the case of Jaipur, I will just show some visuals and just to highlight why it was included in this network. So, these are some of the borrowed slides with all due credits. And Jaipur is a city of crafts and folk art. Dr. Shikha Jain has been doing a lot of work on this city and a lot of other cities. She's doing work on the creative cultural industries and a lot more. So we see Jaipur as a city of crafts and folk art. We know frescoes and paintings, which are very, very famous when we look at the case of Jaipur. The puppet making. There is blue pottery craft, which is very, very famous. Internationally, Jaipur is known for that. And then, of course, the terracotta crafts. We also look at Jaipur as a city of living heritage. We have Havelis that are seen in Jaipur with traditional courtyard settings and houses, and they are still studied. The architects and makers all over the world, they still study the Havelis and the examples from Jaipur. There is also crystal and glass work which is seen in folk paintings. There is also the understanding of Jaipur as a city of design, especially looking at urban form. And we see, very, very interesting facades, courtyard houses, and, interesting forms and morphology when we look at the streets in Jaipur. So, again, the city stands out for that, and it is therefore a city of design and urban form. Jaipur, of course, is a city of design and specifically focusing on architecture. So, we know the royal palaces, the Hawa Mahal, we know the forts, which are very, very exquisite and famous when we talk about Jaipur, and architecturally very rich, designed very nicely with all the fundamentals of architecture in place, very functional, interesting forms, serving the climatology and the well being of people, the comfort. Then, of course, Jaipur is also known as a city of gastronomy, and some of us may be big fans of different kinds of cuisine. So, we see these street food and local cuisine, that is found in Jaipur. It is also a city of performing arts, and we see different examples of street plays, performances, folk dances. So, when we talk about creative cities and cultural industries, taking the case of Jaipur, we see a lot of these baskets jewelry making, there is pottery, there is textiles, stone crafts, metal and wood. So we were also trying to understand, space making crafts or building crafts in terms of materiality, soft material, hard material. So here also, if we go with material palette, there are some crafts which are based, on metal and wood. So tatera and metal inlay. Then some stone crafts like your sculptures, carving, structural applications in buildings and built forms, so building crafts. And then we see, some soft materials like textiles, and then we see the crafts like embroidery, mukesh, tie and dye, block printing, weaving, and so on. So this is also a sort of a classification based on, the material aspects or materiality or matter, and what kind of technique goes into making of a product or a building. Moving ahead, continuing with the discussion on building crafts, we see these stone crafts, we see lime crafts, fresco work, mirror work on the buildings and build forms. And there are also paintings. Now, these paintings can be looked at, as surface finishes. We talked about narrative crafts and surface crafts, where there are these surface finishes, paintings, storytelling through these paintings. So, even those cases we see in Jaipur. There is also paper crafts, papier mâché included, and of course, there are some miscellaneous crafts as well. The very famous mojuri, the leather footwear, and puppetry, Katputli, etc. So these were mapped very meticulously. A dossier was prepared and this was submitted, the application, and with all the details, and then putting these very, very enriching, details of Jaipur internationally on a platform through application. It was then through due process, it was designated the creative city. And we see more examples of building crafts, and I'm specifically talking about building crafts because we are focusing on interior architecture in this course during the lectures that we are discussing. So, stone crafts, stone building, stone inlay, stone carving, structural applications, lime crafts, lime plaster, limestone, again frescoes, like surface finishes, and then the mirror work. So, we see a lot of examples not just in Jaipur, throughout Rajasthan, but this is specifically the case of Jaipur, and highlighting the importance of these cultural and creative industries and uh, what led to its inclusion in the UNESCO Creative City Network. Continuing again with the building crafts of Jaipur, we see these examples like we saw it also on the previous slides, surface finishes and paintings, frescoes, mandana. So these kinds of details we will see throughout the case of Jaipur and Rajasthan. Then there are some other examples of CCIs which I have tried to, collect from different countries and just continue the discussion and take this thread forward, that how CCI could be understood and we could, extract important perspectives and insights from it, and then look at these art craft forms, as industries which play a role in the economic well-being of a country, and how do we create an ecosystem where we integrate them as part of our interior architecture or interior design vocabulary. These are the examples of Finnish creative and cultural industries. So here we see textiles. The resin crafts are very famous when we talk about Finnish CCIs. There are creative designs. The glass again is quite popular when we talk about Finnish industries. Woodworking, textiles we discussed, and then business models and services. So it's not always goods or products. It's also services like we saw in the beginning. They are considered as one of the best practices, and the framework is very interesting, and it serves as a reference for other countries also to have a look at it. It's an important part of creative industries and, Europe's creative economy. It's a very important source of jobs, entrepreneurship, sustainable employment, especially also in remote rural areas. And through these industries, there is a contribution to wider economy. So tourism, food, design, other cultural experiences. These are Japanese creative and cultural industries, and we see the mention of architecture or interior architecture. We all know bonsai, it's very, very famous from Japan. Calligraphy, some of us are well aware of that. Dolls, gardens, ikebana, literature, movies, poetry, the very, very famous origami, the tea ceremony. So, we have all these different kinds of creative and cultural industries when we look at the case of Japan, and how all of these have, been very, very intricate, very, very outstanding contributions of Japan also to the entire world through their creativity and designs. And we see these different subsectors, through which the economic well being of Japan has been taken care of, and there is more potential to contribute. Now, talking about the European CCI as a whole, in an overview manner. So, there is metalworking, ceramics, big time, again, glass, textiles, and also woodworking. So, again, we are talking about Europe's creative economy here and job creation, wider economy in terms of other sectors, also craft education. So I find this very important, and I would like to highlight that, because we are talking about CCIs and we are talking about job creation, we are talking about entrepreneurship, we are talking about economy, they incorporate also, in their pedagogy, very important modules on craft education. So that is something that a lot of countries do, whether it's South Africa, different parts of Europe, Japan. So we are doing that also now in India, right? We have also, as part of NEP, a lot of skill development programs, pedagogy, and educational modules focusing on craft based skills, vocation, entrepreneurship. So this is an important point. So, continuing with the European CCIs and focusing here again on the employment generation, there is this important set of statistics which does, emphasize and re-highlight the discussion that we are having here. So, if we look at this data, there is more than 7 million Europeans who are directly employed by CCIs. It's a huge, huge number. 3.3% of the EU's working population. CCIs attract young workers. 19.1% of jobs are held by under 30-year-olds. These are important data sets. Again, continuing with employment generation and some more interesting statistics on CCIs when we talk about Europe. So, they were also declared as a way out of recession at some point. And it's very remarkable the way, there were so many consumer markets and so much billion turnover focusing on the CCIs. Whether it's music, newspaper, magazines, books, advertising, architecture, visual arts, all of these. So if I zoom in, on this graphic and we look at the upper half of that. So again here, such important, data and discussion. 5 of the 10 most attended international festivals take place in Europe. Then there is, world's largest book sector is in Europe. Over 1 million jobs similar to telecommunications. So these are all very, very interesting sets of data. This is on SMEs. So again, registered architects in Europe and their number. So the numbers speak, and they definitely are intriguing. They do capture our attention, and they do showcase and bring to our attention the importance of CCIs and the economic well being. This is the lower half of the graphic, and again some very, very interesting data. So 7 of the world's 10 most visited art museums are in Europe. 4 out of 5 Europeans listen to radio for 2 hours or more every day. So there is a lot of consumption, there is a lot of demand, there is a lot of employment generation, and all of these sectors are very, very important. They are not just hobby ideas, they are not just for entertainment, they are not just for some kind of a romantic association or a nostalgic value, but we are talking about them in terms of being industries and contributing commercially. So we have already seen that food is also very much a part of the CCI umbrella. We are talking about gastronomy. We already have a city from India which has been designated as the creative city, at a world level, international level, owing to its gastronomy. So, of course, this is a part of creative industries. We are taking more examples and we are talking again of the case of Europe. And here also there is a contribution of 4.2% to the entire GDP when we talk about the CCIs. So, huge turnover. And we are talking especially about visual art, which also includes craft and design. So, these are the sets of data, and then architecture is here, and visual arts is a huge turnover. Continuing the discussion on employment and focusing on the CCIs and Europe, we have a lot of data which again, highlights what we have been discussing throughout this lecture. This is the job creation. And here also we see the top 11 cultural and creative markets, right? And we are seeing the case of Europe. So, books, newspapers, and magazines, music, performing arts, visual arts again here. Architecture, just underneath it, but yeah, significant difference. The numbers here are much more. So, I am continuously talking about the role of art, craft, and the ecosystem of makers, material making, and then conceiving and executing our interior architecture and interior design projects where this ecosystem is capitalized, captured, highlighted, celebrated. The benchmarking the cultural and creative industries, again, in terms of employment generation, this is one statistic from 2012, and here the top third position is CCI. There is a lot of untapped potential for youth employment, and CCIs in Europe continue to provide, that opportunity. And here again, visual art, the highest number. The total government expenditures on cultural services are also very high, and which is very, very encouraging that the government is putting, that kind of funding for cultural services. So this is a very encouraging step. So, the creative industries have been seen to become increasingly important to economic well being, suggesting that human creativity is the ultimate economic resource. The industries of the 21st century will depend increasingly on the generation of knowledge through creativity and innovation. Cities have one crucial resource: their people. Their cleverness, desires, motivation, imagination, and creativity are replacing location, natural resources, and market access as urban resources. The creativity of those who live and run the city will determine future success. The creativity of those who live in and run the city will determine future success. That's a very, very bold statement and something to think about. I'm again summarizing the subsectors of CCIs, which we just, saw in a very overview manner, and highlighting again the basket of visual arts and architecture. And I always talk about interior architecture, and so far we have developed the understanding of this discipline. I'm quite confident and hopeful. I'm giving some examples, where IIT Roorkee has done works or projects focusing on these CCIs. And through different mechanisms, we have been able to showcase and celebrate and talk about this aspect that we discussed today throughout this lecture. So, these are some examples from the Himalayan state of Uttarakhand. This is the Kumaon region of Uttarakhand. And starting with, field visits and identifying proper cases like the buildings, build forms, different typologies of interior architecture, where we can see the profound role of creative cultural industries in creation, in enhancement, in whatever capacity at a furniture level, object level, surface level, or the entire core structure itself. So that identification and mapping was done, and we could also develop some route maps with very interesting, illustrations and highlighting some landmarks of each place where we visited. So this is another route map, and this is the famous Jageshwar temple in Almora. It's a group of temples. It's done in stone, and here we see a lot of detailing on the stone. So again, a part of the CCI umbrella. We conducted a lot of surveys. We tried to capture the oral narratives. We were just talking about the community, its tacit knowledge, and how within the larger umbrella of CCI, these communities and the makers and the traditional ways of um, making objects or buildings have been sort of transferred from one generation to another, and now we are trying to maintain some records of that. Different individuals and organizations working on it in different capacities, and the schemes like Indian Knowledge System by the Ministry and Government of India is also encouraging that. So these are more surveys trying to understand which generation of the maker, what is the age group, which community, which part of the country, what is it that they work on. Some interviews that we have been conducting, and diverse stakeholders from people from academia to industry to government. And then we could generate list of artisans and craftspersons while working on ground after interviews and surveys and field visits. So some of the clusters, some of the craft persons whom we could identify after visiting these clusters, prepare lists like this, some provided by the government, some generated by us. This is what we have been working on. This is again a list of craftsperson that was identified and compiled. Some other clusters which were identified during interviews and discussions, and why they are important and why we went ahead and did some projects in these identified clusters. Then also we documented the visual narratives, cultural narratives, and we documented them through sketches, illustrations, field observations. So interesting illustrations, trying to again capture gastronomy, crafts, folk arts, music, some kind of the other, categories that we saw as part of the CCI umbrella. So we tried to capture a lot of details through these visual narratives. Also architecture. And we see these, ceremonial art forms and festivals, fairs, the kind of attire, the kind of jewelry, all of that was documented. Even the ways of doing a certain art form, and step one to last step, entirely it was mapped and documented and highlighted through illustrations. This is another one over here. This is wood, this is weaving, and we could actually get the looms to IIT Roorkee campus. We demonstrated that to the students. We have been doing it very frequently as part of almost, every year some or the other design studio. This is on copper. This is ringal, which is a kind of a grass, and it comes under the category of bamboo. And then, yes, identifying specific case studies of interior architecture. And these are all the cases which are at least 300 years old and dating back all the way until 1000 years old. And this is one case, from Almora, Khajanchi Mohalla. These are all interiors and surface narrative crafts, paintings, carving. So, all of these are actually very much a part of the CCI umbrella. Different kinds of doors, different kinds of details, kind of motifs, patterns, color palette. So then we just put the observations together, what all at what different eye levels we see. So there are detailed reports on all the details, what are seen over here. Again, this is, narrative art form, how it is done traditionally and what is seen here at present, how much deviation or how much is it that we see, exactly the same. We also generated the technical drawings. These were very interesting, especially. There are some pieces of furniture which are not available anymore. These were seen only in few houses and very interesting form. So we documented these, made the drawings, did the measure drawing. And of course, the, architectural drawings and what building elements, what are they called in local parlance, even those kinds of inventories and drawings and details we have created and we have made a portfolio. So through this project and through this initiative Dharohar, I have been trying to actually create a repository focusing on Uttarakhand specifically and highlighting the interrelationships between CCIs and interior architecture. So architecture itself is part of a CCI umbrella, but within these two subsectors like visual art and interior architecture, what are the interrelationships? That's what I have been trying to do as part of my projects as well as as my PhD, which I defended here and I convocated. So this is resource building exercise. We have been doing participatory workshops. We have been inviting artisans and craftspersons from across Uttarakhand and other parts of the country to the institute. We have been producing and releasing monographs and reports. We have been putting, craft bazaars, and we have received support from the local media partners in highlighting that. Then, yeah, some kinds of exhibitions, posters, different kinds of professional works, they have been put up highlighting this initiative. More monographs, again visual inventories and exhibition panels. This was a participatory workshop. This is another monograph. So these are just ways in which we have been trying to, disseminate also the work that is done. We were very privileged that we could get the original artifacts from the Tribal Museum, Pithoragarh, with the help of late Dr. Pankti ji, and we could put up an exhibition here with support from Ministry of Culture and IIT Roorkee. There was also this participatory workshop. We have been able to, publish the findings through conferences, papers, and symposia. And those are the different kinds of details that you see on the screen. Even drawings like these, which capture the traditional knowledge systems in which a typical Kumaoni, timber and stone house is made, the 3D exploded views, step-by-step construction, what is seen in the interiors, what is seen on the facade. So these are very much CCIs and the interrelationship between the visual art sector and the interior architecture. Again, some contributions to the conference proceedings and full journal papers, and some contribution that we have done to the Encyclopedia of Vernacular Architecture for upcoming issues. Then we have visited some very specific villages from both Garhwal and Kumaon region, and again documented and mapped interesting CCIs. This is an old pit loom, which is like a rare occurrence these days. So those kinds of details we were able to capture and share with a lot of fraternity and people and curious readers. Gastronomy, we have been talking about that in the CCI, and Kumaon region specifically is known for lots of superfoods and nutritional foods. So even those kinds of inventories we had made. This is more on interior architecture and highlighting the profound role of art and craft. So this apen art form and the wood carving that we see here, which are seen in all these houses. More inventories capturing on those details from structural to surface level finishes. Again, the same. So these are all visual inventories and they are put up in lots of exhibitions already. These are the cultural creative industries and some sketches I had shown already on previous slides. So through documentation of visual and cultural narratives, we have again produced these exhibition panels and visual inventories. The monograph, some more data and findings and reports. Some courses which were done focusing on the interrelationships between these subsectors of CCIs. So this is one Gyan course that was conducted. This is my another NPTEL course where I'm talking about this interrelationship. It ran for the 7th time actually. So I haven't put the other posters here. If anyone is interested, so in that I'm discussing in detail these subsectors of art, craft and architecture. This is one book again which talks about the CCIs that I am focusing on, and there are examples from interior architecture which have been discussed elaborately, specifically some cases from Agra and how we see in interior design and interior architecture projects the power of storytelling, the role of art, craft and the role of makers, in creating, enhancing and executing spaces. Also communicating about them. These are some studio exercises and some courseworks that are done at IIT Roorkee where I have been the coordinator of the studios. And here also we have tried to capture different aspects of CCIs in a very holistic manner. Some documentary films that we have been producing with the students and with the research team. Some very interesting material maps. So what is the flow of material, from how much radius different kinds of materials are procured, when we analyze a certain build form or an interior architecture project. Then trying to understand the aspects of sustainability, also, embodied energy, etc. So very interesting studio works. I have only managed to put a few here. More on the material flow and the map. So this was like an overview discussion where we were talking about the creative cultural industries and we were specifically focusing on visual art and interior architecture. And next time I will talk about interior design, especially focusing on the future roadmap and the opportunities and challenges that the field of interior design, puts forth us. Some references I have put together, specifically focusing on the CCIs and of course a larger discussion on interior design. So there are lots of books over there which may be very, very useful. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.